In Parshas Vaera, we begin to see the work, the wonders of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in punishing the Egyptian people, the Mitzrim, in the hopes of freeing the Jewish people by bringing the Makos, the 10 plagues upon them. The second plague was that of Tzvardeya. Tzvardeya were frogs, and these Tzvardeya, these frogs, swarmed throughout Egypt. But Rashi explains to us that this began with one Tzvardeya. The pasuk says, "Vatal hatzvardeya." The tzvardeya went up. It should say, "Vatal hatzvardeim," and the frogs went up. So Rashi explains that one frog started all the trouble, and the people saw this frog and they were trying to get rid of it, so they tried to hit it. And every time that they hit it, more and more frogs appeared, and before they knew it, frogs swarmed throughout the land of Egypt. So one of the questions asked by the Sefer Tama Dekra is, if the Egyptian people realized after hitting it a couple of times that there were more and more frogs, that they would hit the frogs, there would be more and more, why didn't they just stop themselves from hitting the frogs even further? And that way, the frogs wouldn't multiply and they wouldn't take over all of Mitzrayim. So he explains as follows. He says, when a person is in a rage, when a person is angry, they just act. They just act without thinking. They just immediately try to solve the problem they have in front of them. They try to take out their anger. They try to express themselves without putting any thought into their actions. If the Mitzrim would have paused for a second and realized, if we keep on hitting that frog, more frogs are going to come, then maybe they would have just stopped, not hit the frog at all, and the frogs would not have eventually swarmed, and the plague wouldn't have been as bad as it was. But because they were so frustrated, they became so angry, they just kept on hitting and hitting, not realizing that they were only causing more problems for themselves. And so he says that's a lesson for us when it comes to our lives. Certain times we become frustrated for whatever reasons. Frustrated with people, frustrated with situations. And frustration often leads to anger, and the Torah teaches us that ka'as, anger, takes away our ability to think and our ability to control ourselves. And when we become frustrated, when we become angry, what we need to do immediately is just take ourselves out of the picture. Is not respond, not express ourselves, just walk away, separate ourselves. Once we separate ourselves from the situation, then the ka'as, the anger, won't take control, and we'll be able to start reasoning in our minds and make sure that we take the appropriate action without losing and making mistakes that we would later regret. If the Mitzrim, if the Egyptians, had only paused for a moment and stopped being so angry and so frustrated, they would have realized that they would have been able to solve the problem, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu would have to bring another plague to cause them the trouble that they eventually did get, because they didn't stop and think. It ultimately led to the spread of Tzvardeya, of frogs, throughout the land of Egypt. May we heed this message and make sure that in our lives, as heated as things become, as frustrated as we become, even as angry as we may be inside, let us pause and gather our thoughts before reacting. As they say, it's always better to sleep on it before saying something or making a bad decision. Thank you for listening, and have a good Shabbos.